I got on the bus. I paid my 2 pennies. I had been working in the hotel for 10 hours, standing on my feet, serving the white man. I sat down at the very first seat available. A big fat white guy stood up, slapped me on the back of the head, and he said, "Get to the back of the bus, nigger." I don't know what I was thinking. I was just tired. So I had literally had collapsed in the seat. So I got up and I went to the back of the bus. I went to the pharmacist because my mother was sick. She had the wasting flu that everybody was getting, and I had a whole dollar, and I asked the pharmacist to give me something because my mother had the wasting flu. I handed him my dollar, but instead he gave me some baking soda. And I said I needed the red medicine that you get. He called me a nigger and told me to get out of his store. I don't know what I was thinking. I was hoping that I could get something for my money. It was a whole dollar, and he kept the whole dollar. I was running late for work for the hotel, and I hopped into a streetcar, a cab, a taxi, and I had 25 cents on me. He drove me part of the way. He took the quarter from me, and then when he saw a white person, he told me to get out of the taxi. I had only gone like a block. I told him to give me back my quarter, and he said no, and he threatened to call one of the police, which I knew would just, beat me down, leave me black and blue, and I would lose my job at the hotel. I was walking on the street, and I was reading a book that my mom had given me, and my dad used to read this to me every night. And I wasn't watching where I was going, and somebody bumped into me, and I fell down to the ground. And I looked up, and it was a white man and a white woman, and obviously the white man had bumped into me and knocked me down to the ground. But when I looked up, he said, "You knocked into this here fine white woman." And then he yelled, and the police came over, and yeah, they beat me and took my book, ripped it to shreds, stomped on it, and then proceeded to stomp on me. It took some nice Republican white gentleman to come over and rescue me, and he put me in his car and drove me all the way to my mama's house. And my daddy saw my bruises, and all he could do was thank the nice Republican man for bringing me, and sent him on his way. These are stories, scenarios of what it was like in black life during the segregation, or not the segregation, I don't want to say that, during the Jim Crow era in the South, when the South was completely run by the Democrats, and the Democrats had complete control over the laws and what have you. But the population treated the black people as a little bit more than slaves. That's just about it. It was not uncommon for black people to be beat up, hit, and they could not strike back, because if they struck back, they would be surely killed. The mobs would hang them. The police would beat them to death. They would be murdered inside of jail cells. They would have their limbs chopped off and what have you. I did a video about segregation, and this is the retelling of that, because that video was messed up. The original movement to stop this sort of occurrence was not about getting black people to move away from each other. It was about a financial standing up for justice for financial reasons. The original bus boycotts occurred because black people would pay their money, same as white people, but they were relegated to sit at the back of the bus and treated as second-class citizens. The original movement brought the entire community together. Black taxi drivers wouldn't charge black fares the same amount they would charge white fares during the bus boycott, which lasted an entire year. They would charge them like 10 cents or a nickel. There was a lot of carpooling. If somebody had a car, they would all pile into the car, or they would walk. They would not take the bus. This ran several bus companies out of business and almost brought the city down to a financial halt, because the black people had been so ingrained into the city financially that when they stopped paying the money, when they stopped buying bus fares, it lowered almost everything, from the taxes that were received down to the bus fares that were received for the money that we're keeping. You have to understand that an overwhelming majority of bus fares were actually black. The white people had cars, and it was like 1 out of 2 white people had cars. So buses weren't a common thing for white people. Buses were a common thing for black people. So when they had a bus boycott, it brought the city to a halt. It's not until you have the later on demonstrations with the group that formed, and Martin Luther King being nominated as president of the group, that you have Kennedy telling that group to stop the bus boycott. And that bus boycott really was stopped only after a year, when the city acquiesced and said, okay, we're going to stop treating black people as second-class citizens. Had the Martin Luther King thing and that group not formed, we would have had a completely different scenario today, and would have had a completely different scenario of what segregation means and what the ultimate outcome of that. I know I'm trying to play God and say, well, if that hadn't happened, it would have turned out like this. I believe it would have turned out much differently, because it was a financial strike, and not a quote-unquote civil rights strike. The very first thing that Kennedy did was to make sure that all financial strikes stopped and that black people kept paying their money and still being treated like second-class citizens. A lot of people are brainwashed today to think segregation, one, immediately brings up to mind black people, two, and three, that it's bad. Many groups politically segregate themselves and physically segregate themselves to make the group cohesive and to move forward financially. You can see this in all groups. Jews, other white people. Jews are, the people who call themselves Jews are white people. They're not Hebrew by any stretch of the imagination. They have absolutely no genetic claim to the actual Jews of 3,000 years ago or 5,000 years ago. Those people, those Hebrews were actually black. They were not white, nor were they Middle Eastern. That is a concoction that was formulated later. The people that you see today who call themselves Jews are actually Khazars. They segregate themselves. They trade with each other, financially. You have various white groups that segregate themselves: Eastern Europeans, Western Europeans, British. You have the Latinos who segregate themselves either by just a general Latino culture or by actual countries. You have the Asians that segregate themselves. All of these groups segregate themselves. They don't call it segregation. They call it Little China. They call it Little Italy. They call it Irish Town. That's what they call it. They don't call it segregation. When it comes to black Americans, African Americans, the descendants of Africans in the United States, including those African descendants who were completely free, like my family, it is hoisted upon us that segregation is a bad thing. You're being played for a fool. You're being bamboozled. You're being hoodwinked. You need to segregate yourselves. You need to come together and march to the beat of one drum. You need to gather together and to pool your resources and form lobbies and get lobbyists. There are, I was reading through several news articles about the subject, and the black lobbyists, these are lobbyists who are hired by other companies who happen to be black, were all lamenting that there was no such thing as, not that there's no such thing, but there's very little black lobbies. That is, lobbyists to further black people. You have the Black Congressional Caucus, but that organization or that group, which is formulated by the Black Democratic House of Representatives, is a joke. They do not put forth anything, and I've been on all of their social network things, so I've been monitoring them for over 2 years. They do not put forth anything to promote or to further the black community financially. They will spend a lot of time, and really you all need to go to hell. They spend a lot of time pandering to the black community, talking about, oh, this is injustice, and oh, this is against civil rights. We don't need civil rights. We need finance. We need set-asides. We need bailouts. Yes, all other groups get financial set-asides, get reparations. Japanese, Cubans, the Guamans, people of Guam, got reparations for stuff really that didn't even amount to anything. It was for a couple of years of this, or even months of such and so. And black people were raped, pillaged, all of their wealth stolen. You have the story of Black Wall Street, a neighborhood of 10,000 black people who had their own banks, shops, infrastructure, taxi services, hotels, motels, movie theaters, doctors, lawyers, private jets. They had their own private planes, maybe not a jet. We were talking about in the 50s. And the white people of Tulsa, Oklahoma, started a race riot, slaughtered nearly all of the people, burned down their houses, stole all of their gold, their money, all of their wares, and they have yet to receive any reparations. This happened in the 50s, and they directly stole their money, stole their land, stole their money, and the National Guard was called in to further shoot the remaining ones. And they were put into concentration camps. The Japanese were put into internment camps in the United States, but they were houses. It was just like they blocked off a neighborhood and told the Japanese to go live in there, and that was the internment camp. And they received reparations of about $40,000-$50,000 per family. If it's not per family, it might be per person, per Japanese person, as reparations for that. The Black Wall Street has yet to receive reparations. Now, going back to the word segregation. Segregation is an English word meaning separated. That's all it means. If you have Cubans, if you have Filipinos, if you have Mexicans, if you have Irish, if you have Scottish, if you have English, if you have Scandinavians, and they separate themselves, they are segregated. It is only when you get to African Americans who have been here for 2 or 3 or even 7 generations that you get a white outcry of racism when black people move together. And let me tell you, the middle class and upper class blacks are finally figuring this out after all of these years, and they are finally moving into neighborhoods together, formulating black neighborhoods, because it is more empowering for the black people. You have far less problems along the lines of racial tensions or anything when you live in your own community. You can take control of the police department, fire all of the racist police, hire local black police who are going to look out for the benefit of the neighborhood and not terrorize the neighborhood. This is happening mostly on the East Coast, along the eastern states, where you have the affluent and professional black people moving into neighborhoods themselves together. You have some of the richest black counties along the eastern seaboard and along the north. I know you have Detroit and Chicago, but you have in the suburbs, in the deep parts of those states, you have black people moving together, black professionals moving together, because they come to the realization that there is nothing to this whole notion that segregation is bad. It is only when you get to black people that you have this white outcry of, oh, you don't need to be separate, we can all live together. But there are politically separate groups all over these United States. We need to segregate ourselves. We need to separate ourselves. Get our political base, start electing local officials. That's the very first thing we need to do. Start getting our bailouts, our set-asides, our small business loans together, and create autonomous pockets around the nation. This is what needs to be done. Why? Because every other group is already doing it. It is only black people who are being relegated to serfdom. You have the Latinos and Mexicans surpassing blacks financially within 15 years. Yes, Latinos are also surpassing blacks in terms of prison population, but that's because you have an influx of millions of Mexicans each year. Black people are not repopulating our group anywhere near that fast. We are on the same track as white people as far as having babies. And we need to grab a hold of these black women who are killing black babies. We need every single child to be born. And let me say this. If you are a young woman or a young adult who's pregnant and who is thinking about abortion, have a child. I'll adopt a child. I'm being completely serious. If you can contact me and you want to abort, I'll adopt the child. Carry the child to term, I'll adopt the child. I don't care what you come from. You could be the poorest person ever. I'll adopt a child. Stop aborting babies. Stop listening to the lies that it is a woman's choice. You are murdering your unborn baby. You are not making a body decision. Should I take a bath or not? Should I douche or not? You are murdering an unborn child. Get this notion, this Illuminati notion of that it's some sort of decision. I don't care. If you're white, go ahead, abort as many babies as you want. But if you're black, I'm telling you, contact me. We'll have a discussion. Contact me. Inbox me. We'll have a discussion. I'll talk to you. If all else fails, I'll adopt a child. Stop having abortions. Black women have killed off 50 million unborn children. That is double the population of black people. Let me say that again. That is double the population of our current black people in the United States. You have killed off a whole population of black people. You're idiots. If you know of a young black lady or a young black adult lady who just got pregnant and is poor in some sort of situation, and you even suspect that she might abort it, have her contact me. This needs to stop immediately. We need to operate as a cohesive unit. All other groups are already operating as a cohesive unit. We need all of our feet on the ground, marching in the same direction. Everybody complain, all the black people complain about this and that and the other. The very first step is we need to be a group, and we need to be an autonomous group. That means we don't have any outside help, we don't have any outside input, but we also don't have white people telling us what to do. We don't have white police beating and murdering our children in the street. We need to segregate ourselves. And if you're a member of this 100 black men of whatever city, if you're a member of the Black Big Brothers organization, if you're one of the black professionals, go to the poor black communities and see what you can do. See how you can elevate and take control of that neighborhood and elevate it. Here's a hint. The very first thing you need to do is build parks in them. There are no parks in them. This depresses the human psyche and leads to a very bad spiral of depression. These are very real terms. So, if you find this poor black neighborhood, the very first thing you need to do, go to City Hall and say, hey, build a park in this neighborhood. People need parks. They need natural beauty to thrive. We as humans need natural beauty to thrive. That might be something that you didn't know. You'll find that in most of the very bleak and poor black neighborhoods, there are no parks. Coincidence? I don't mean to make light, but we need to first formulate ourselves into groups. If you're a white person and you want to leave a comment about, oh, we don't need to look at race. Oh, the world is beautiful. Oh, we're all humans. Go live in Sweden somewhere, okay? Where they think that way, and it's a bunch of white people anyway. In the United States of America, we have groups. We are segregated. They don't call it segregation when it's a Chinese person. They call it segregation when it's a black person. They don't call it segregation when it's a Jewish community. They call it segregation when it's a black community. They don't call it segregation when it's Italians. They call it segregation when it is Negroes. We need to separate ourselves, form our own communities, form our own banks, make our own microloans to start our own businesses, and assist in managing that business to make sure that that business is successful. We need to formulate groups of black entrepreneurs who come together all at once to form little tiny pockets of businesses that start all together, that are interchangeable and that can trade with each other to make sure that the community can thrive and that the businesses can thrive. We don't need a liquor store to open. We don't need a funeral home to open. We need a grocery, liquor, funeral, clothing, gadgets, manufacturing, farming. We need all of that to open all at once, and they be black owned. All other groups have lobbyists in local, state, and federal government. All other groups. All other groups. Black people are already, on paper, seen as a group. But we are forced to not operate as a group. We are brainwashed to think that coming together is somehow bad. You always get these people say, oh, when Negroes get together, something bad's going to happen. You need to stop that. If somebody says that around you, slap them up against the head. Psh, go ahead. And tell them that Shakaama told them to shut the hell up. We need to come together. You need to protect each other. We need black policemen, and the black policemen need to protect us. We need black lobbyists to protect us. We need black politicians to protect us. We have the most outlay of money from our community and the least income of money into our community. We have Koreans setting up shop in black neighborhoods, what little black neighborhoods that are left, sucking the neighborhood dry of funds and then taking that money and shipping it to their community. We need to stop that. We need to boycott, first of all, boycott all of those non-black businesses, just like we boycotted the buses. Boycott those non-black businesses, because I guarantee you a black person tried to get a business loan in that same exact spot and was denied by a white bank, but the white bank turned around and gave a Korean the loan. They told the black person that loan is too risky, but they turned around and told the Korean, oh, that loan is A-okay. We need to boycott all of those non-black businesses. Stop buying from them. Go out of your way to support black businesses. Then when those white businesses go then those non-black businesses go out of business, take over the building and start a black business. Make sure that your neighborhood has proper zoning, commercial proper zoning. You need to understand, you need to study this. You need to study finance, economics, urban development. You need to have these planners and invite these planners to your meeting and make sure that they're black and that they're working on the same page for you, for your community. Segregation is not a bad word. It is an English word. Get it out of your mind that it is a bad word. Thank you. Sorry for the length of this. Thank you for watching the Shakaama Live Show.